Things Podcast. Hey, Phantomaniacs, welcome to the newest episode of the Needless Things Podcast, where we talk about toys, movies, music, and all manner of pop culture dorkery. I'm your host, Dave, and here's what I want for Christmas. I want a new headset for recording podcasts because mine, the right ear, no longer works. It broke last night while I was talking to our pal Mike Gordon recording this week's episode, which is all about Christmas on television. Like halfway through the episode, I just stopped getting sound in the right side of my headset, and it's not my computer because everything else works fine. And apparently, the fact that this headset has lasted me since I first joined the Earth Station Who podcast, or actually, you know what? I take that back. It's since I first made an appearance on the Earth Station 1 podcast, because I bought this headset for that appearance. This is a Turtle Beach headset. I don't know what the model is, but I'm sure they don't make it anymore anyway, because it's 7 years old. But, yeah, that's not bad, apparently. When I told Mike how long they had lasted, he was quite surprised. So what I want for Christmas is a new, preferably Turtle Beach headset. It's a gaming headset with your phones and microphone and whatever all the technical terms are. Boy, do I sound like an idiot sometimes. You know what? I don't mind because it's the Christmas season. I feel great. I'm excited. And you know who else is excited? Mom is excited. And she has another Christmas story to share with all of you.
Hello, everyone. I'm back again with more memories from David's first early Christmases. When David was about 3 and a half, Superman, Spider-Man, and Batman were the popular superheroes. David had the PJs that were one piece, footed, zipped from foot to neck for each of those superheroes. We put David to bed on Christmas Eve in his Batman PJs, and when he got up Christmas morning, Santa had left the Batmobile on the tree. David played with it all morning as we had breakfast and looked at what else Santa had left. Then we all got dressed, had lunch, and ate some family gifts for the rest of the day. We were enjoying the quietness of the day and just relaxing when we heard a blood-curdling scream from the back of the house. I ran back to find David standing in the middle of his bedroom. All his clothes were on the floor, and he had his Batman PJs on, with them zipped up until his penis stopped the zipper. There was nothing to do but unzip it and cringe as I did it. Fortunately, he had stopped zipping as soon as it pinched. A lot of memories that Christmas. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Aw, thanks for sharing, Mom. I really appreciate it. I remember that vividly, as I remember most of the things that she's talked about so far, because I've got a little collection of messages for you, the listeners, that will carry on throughout the rest of the month. But it's interesting getting somebody else's perspective on these memories that we have. And it's also interesting how your parents take on a different identity as you get older. You know, that's Mom, but now she's Muma to my son. Like this entirely different person who isn't, but is. She has this whole other identity and life, I guess. But anyway, thanks for sharing, Mom. Merry Christmas. I love you, even though you chose to share that particular story. And so let's see. Let's move on to some news. Nothing is specifically Christmassy, but there is a lot to talk about, and the biggest news is probably that Hasbro has finally officially announced the release of Baby Yoda toys, or the child, if you will, and they all look great, of course. and they're all up for pre-order. They're all shipping in March, and there are a lot of different things to choose from. There is a Black Series figure, of course, that comes with a frog, the little teacup, and a couple other things. Oh, the ball, the little control from the Mandalorians, from the Razor Crest, which is the Mandalorian ship. There is a talking plush toy, which I assume will just make the little squeaking noises that Yoda has made so far, or Baby Yoda, the child, has made so far. There is a series of 2.2-inch collectible figures that look a little cartoonier, and it's 3 different 2-packs that include the child in different iconic poses from the show, and it's weird to refer to them as iconic, but considering the fact that they're all memes now, they are iconic. There's no denying that. And then finally, there is the child 6.5-inch figure that, great, but what does this go with? I don't know, but whatever, it doesn't matter, because all of this stuff is going to sell like crazy. And you can pre-order everything now. It's available on Hasbro Pulse, of course, but I don't recommend you go there because despite the fact that their little slogan is customers first, it seems that it's every other retailer on the planet first and then our customers, because I have not, since the first couple of months of them being a business, I have not received anything that I've ordered before I found it in stores. So I ordered the child collectibles, 2 Black Series figures, because my son is now collecting those as well, and we ordered the plush toy because, come on. But I ordered them from BigBadToyStore.com, who I should probably at some point reach out to for some sort of affiliate thing, because I do find them to be the very best toy retailer on the internet, but I just haven't. But there you go. You can get them from Entertainment Earth. You can get them all over, everywhere. I'm sure you can get them from Amazon as well if you want to take a chance on your child being smashed when it finally arrives in the mail. But I went with Big Bad because I love them. In other news, a couple of big trailers dropped this week, and I am excited about... Well, I'm excited in different ways. The trailer for Wonder Woman 1984 dropped on Sunday, and it's as big and electrifying and wonderful and exciting as you would expect it to be. I love to look at Pedro Pascal as, okay, so apparently he's playing Maxwell Lord, but if somebody hadn't told me that, my assumption would have been that he's Glorious Godfrey. And it seems to me that maybe they're sort of rolling those characters / stories into one. But everything about this looked amazing. The part that really blew my mind, though, and if you're following Phantom Troublemaker on Instagram, you already know this, was Wonder Woman riding lightning bolts, or swinging from lightning bolts, using her lasso of truth. That is the kind of wild, big, crazy thinking that makes me love movies. That is some, Big Trouble in Little China shit right there. And I adored it. I cannot wait to see this movie. And I'll admit, I was not... we've talked about it on the show. I really, really liked Wonder Woman. I think it's probably the best of the DC films. But I didn't lose my mind over it like everybody else did. So for this sequel, I very much had to wait and see. Because we don't know. One movie does not a successful superhero movie career make. So now I'm totally stoked. I think it looks awesome, and I can't wait to see it in the theater opening day. On Monday, we got another trailer for a highly anticipated movie. Maybe not as highly anticipated, but definitely one that people are curious about. And that is the new Ghostbusters, which has now been subtitled Afterlife. Starring Finn Wolfhard and a bunch of other people, and Paul Rudd as your obligatory wacky adult. And apparently starring Ernie Hudson, Bill Murray, and Dan Aykroyd in some capacity. This looks like a good movie. And look, just to put this on the table, I still like the 2016. I still like Ghostbusters Answer the Call. It's not what I wanted, but it's a really fun movie with some really fun performances. Yes, some bad choices were made, but overall it's a fun movie. I would not consider it part of Ghostbusters because I think there's a very specific tone about the first movie and even the second movie, even though some people don't love it, that you just aren't going to be able to recapture. And I think this new movie looks like it's taking the ideas and making its own modern tone, which may or may not work. I don't know. I liked what I saw. I'm very interested to see what the story is and how it works out. You know, very clearly Finn and his female co-star are Spangler's grandkids, and they look the part to perfection. And Paul Rudd is Paul Rudd. He's phenomenal. He's fantastic. He's eminently watchable. I love the guy. So, I mean, again, we're a Ghostbusters family. We all love those movies, and we will be in the theater, you know, opening day to watch it. But to me, the eternal problem of Ghostbusters follow-up/sequels is that as a kid, the real Ghostbusters burned into my brain, and that is the continuation of the story from the first movie. Nothing will ever include that. Nothing will ever, because this one has already made it apparent that what happened in New York in the first movie, which I don't know, are they just discounting the second movie? Like, I can't tell, but it's another one of those things where, like, they didn't go on to become a franchise. They didn't go on to be, they didn't continue being Ghostbusters after the first film. And that just bothers the heck out of me because, to me, Real Ghostbusters was the best story and will always be the true continuity. But it doesn't mean I can't enjoy other things. So, there you go. I'm excited. We'll be there to watch it. I hope it's great. Finally, one other piece of news, Super 7, and I apologize, I am going to have to find the link. It just went away. Okay, Super 7 has shown an Andre the Giant action figure. There is some debate over the likeness to Andre the Giant. Now, this is depicting a young Andre in his blue trunks with that fringed suede vest that he had. And he's got sort of his more familiar hair and his afro hair. I like it, but I see where people who say the likeness isn't good are coming from. I feel like the laughing likeness is pretty solid, but I'm not going to lie, like the rest of them aren't great. And the problem with Super 7 is you have to pre-order these things, and then they come online, and you get what you get. So it's not a deal where you can wait until you see it in the store. And that is the problem I have with the other Super 7 offering. They've also opened up pre-orders for Conan the Barbarian figures based on the movie. And I wanted to like these at first. I don't. They're using the Masters of the Universe Classics bucks with film likenesses, and I'm looking at them, and I'm not going to say they're bad, because they're not bad, but they are not a look, they're not an aesthetic that I would prefer for Conan the Barbarian toys. As much as I want nicely articulated Conan movie toys, and look, they've got all the detailing right. All the costumes look great. The weapons, the helmets, like the multiple heads. It's got Thulsa Doom. This is Thulsa Doom in that movie, right? Yeah, Thulsa Doom, James Earl Jones. I mean, the James Earl Jones likeness is really nice. Comes with a helmet on and no helmet. It's Thorgrim, Thulsa Doom, Conan, and Rexor, who is the blonde guy, and then Thorgrim is the red-haired guy. And they're cool-looking figures, but that aesthetic just doesn't look right to me, and I hate to say it because I want them. I want to have cool Conan figures, but there's just something about these that's off. So, again, if I could wait until I see them in the store and then make a decision, then that would be great. But I'm not pre-ordering these for $180, which, by the way, Super 7, has now their ultimate figures in this scale are $45, much like their reaction figures are now $18, just because when you're doing these small collector-oriented lines, I'm sure it costs even more than the already expensive manufacturing that toy makers are dealing with now. So that's just how it is. Prices are going up, and I'll tell you guys, it's killing me not to get those Turtles figures that Super 7 is releasing, but I just can't make that kind of financial commitment. And I hate it. I want to support cool stuff like that. Honestly, if these Conan figures were $30, maybe I'd just make the dive and just get them. But for $45 a piece, I need them to be more perfect. There's nothing wrong with them as far as quality and looks goes. They're just not what I want from Conan figures, which may sound weird because they're sharing aesthetics with one of the greatest barbarian toy lines of all time, the greatest barbarian toy line of all time. But it's just not doing it for me. And I hate it, but that's how it is. All right, so that's our news. Now it is time to move along into the meat of the show. I wanted to celebrate Christmas this year, and all month long we're celebrating Christmas, but one of the, me being 43 years old, growing up in the 80s with just a tad in the 70s and on into the 90s, television was a huge part of my life in every single way, particularly in pop culture. And Christmas television was something that was extra special to me. And I wanted to talk about through the years, events, television specials, episodes, whatever, that have been Christmas themed. And we cover, as I say at the end of the episode, we barely scratch the surface, but we get some tantalizing tidbits in there. We talk about a lot of things that maybe don't get as much attention. We don't cover Rankin Bass or Charlie Brown or anything like that. We tried to get into some really interesting ground and things that were special to us, and I think we had a great conversation. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. So now, here's me and our pal Mike Gordon talking about Christmas on television. I'm not sure I could ever watch another Christmas special. I've been doing so much research for this episode, but that's a big fat lie because I love Christmas specials. And if there's one person that I'm going to talk about Christmas specials with, that is Mr. Mike Gordon.
Howdy, and howdy, happy holidays.
Well, hi. I'm glad I explained that to you before we started talking. So
yeah, because it really does sound like, and appropriately enough, it sounds like Mr. Mr. the Christmas
Hanky.
Pooh, Mr. Hanky
Mr.
the Christmas
Hanky.
Pooh,
Howdy ho.
which is a Christmas special, legit, right?
Yeah, and you know what? It's one that I overlooked when I was putting my list together and doing my research today. Although I know it so well because I even have the soundtrack album to it.
Well, yeah, I do too. I do too. Yep.
And it's great. Mr.
It is on my
Hanky the Christmas Pooh.
It is among my playlist this time of year for Xmas songs. That's what my playlist is called. So
that's very good, and I'm glad that you brought up Xmas because, in general, I am opposed to the Xmas. I feel like it should be Christmas always, except there is one Christmas, and I say Christmas specials. We're talking about specials. We're talking about episodes of regular series, basically anything Christmassy that was on television. And there is one instance that I feel Xmas is acceptable, and we'll get to that later.
So yeah, to start, like, I was thinking about it, and, when you said you wanted to talk about Christmas specials, I'm down for that. I've seen a bunch of them, over 50 years of research, we'll say, right? Sure.
Right.
And because, that was something, we were always watching Christmas specials. And so I kind of broke them down into three categories.
Okay.
Right? There's your variety shows, like, the Bing Crosby, Perry Como, like he was like legit, like the guy who did it every year. And I think you can, but those were like the special ones that had duets and people singing and dancing and that kind of stuff. And you don't see those much today. But there are some that stand out even as like about 4 or 5 years ago that I thought was pretty good. So there's that kind of Christmas special. Then there's the Christmas special that is something made specifically for Christmas, like your Charlie Brown Christmas special, your Rankin Bass programming, all that kind of stuff. And then you have your regular series, which decide to do a Christmas episode. So those are the three categories that I kind of was kind of locked to. And there's some that kind of bleed into, and there's some that, like, for example, and I get this right out of the way, right off the bat, the Star Wars Christmas special doesn't really, that's kind of all of the above.
Well, I don't know. I think it's something because it's not part of any regular series. It's part of a franchise. Although at the time it wasn't a franchise.
True. This was the first step to being a franchise, right?
Yeah. If you're looking at the old expanded universe, this was the first thing, because I don't think Splinter of the Mind's Eye didn't come out for until later. I don't think so either. I think Star Wars, and yeah, and even if it did, it didn't get near as much right
like, eyes on it as the Star Wars Christmas
which is
special.
Unfortunate, because Splinter of the Mind's Eye is fairly interesting and entertaining, and the Star Wars Holiday Special, no matter how much you love Star Wars, no matter how much you think, oh, I'd like some weird off-putting Star Wars, it's terrible.
I think its biggest problem is that it's just too damn long. I think most people think of Christmas specials as being an hour,
right?
And
with commercials.
If this was an hour with commercials, I think it would be fantastic.
Whew, but that's a strong word, Mike Gordon.
Well, it would be fun. You could at least like blow through it. Like you could just be like, okay, well, yeah, I don't like this part, but then whatever. But the fact that it's 2 hours...
You'd say, I don't like this part, and then you'd be done.
It's still Star Wars. And, I don't know if it's the worst Star... it's debatable whether that's the worst Star Wars that's ever been made, but...
Well, no, that would be Last Jedi.
Oh. All right, so... but I do think it checks off, a couple of the boxes, because it is a special... It's a variety show, and yeah, it's part of a franchise, so you could argue that it's a Christmas-themed episode of a franchise, right? So that is unique in of itself, and I think we'll just leave it there. Really, that's the best. Its ambition is the best part about it, right?
I've watched it 3 or 4 times in my life, probably. I'm sure my parents sat down and watched it with me when I was a wee lad, and I didn't really, I have no memory of that. I don't know if it, made any kind of impression on me whatsoever. And then in the early 90s, probably when I first started discovering what we at Needless Things like to refer to as import videos, I got a copy and watched it once. And at the time, I don't think its reputation was as bad as it is now.
No. And, well, that's its own fault, really, because it was so unavailable for so long it became legendary.
Yeah.
And then when people saw it, they were so, disappointed. So it really just didn't help it. Like, if they just released it and it had been out there, I think we all just would have been like, okay, that's what it is. But the fact that it became this thing that you couldn't see, and it was forbidden to see,
truly
for good reason.
Yes,
that didn't help it anyway. So.
Well, I think at the time when I bought it, because I got they used to have the tape sales, VHS imports at Dragon Con. There would be tables and tables of them before Dragon Con cracked down on that, and I believe that's where I got it. And at the time I got it, I wasn't even sure it was real. Like, I wasn't at that point in my life I didn't even know for sure that it was a real thing that had happened. So when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a thing. Oh, and look, there's Boba Fett. Well, I'll buy this. And I don't know that I hated it. I just thought it was bad. But in subsequent viewings, because I like to give things a chance. I'll go back and revisit things that I don't like, because sometimes age or experience, whatever, will change your perspective, and you can have an appreciation for things that maybe you once didn't care for. That has not been the case here. I hate it more every time I watch it.
Yeah, I watched it when it was first aired. I mean, we all did. I mean, granted,
Sure,
there were only 4 channels at the time, but still,
Right.
And I have no idea what was on opposite. But the fact is, nobody. I mean, I don't know. At least probably 70% of the country was probably watching this. But I mean, look. As I get older, there's a lot of spots that I don't remember. And I think my brain was trying to keep me healthy by sort of keeping this from me. So I remember very little about it, and I really haven't watched it start to finish since then. I've as I get older, I'm like, why would I waste that time?
Yeah.
So moving on from that, I think and I just want to get this over with too right away, because I doubt there's a lot of these that maybe you put or thought about.
Okay.
But the variety shows, like I said, Bob Hope, and everybody had them. I mean, they back in the 70s and 80s, everybody had them just in general.
Well, the two that stand out in my mind, and you'll probably end up mentioning them, and they're two that I've actually watched within the past few years, are Liberace's and Johnny Cash's.
Wow. Okay, so neither one of those are like on my little list. So that's amazing that you would remember those.
Well, no, they're on Amazon.
Oh, are they?
Yes.
Are they?
I watched for anyone, I highly recommend the Liberace Christmas special. It is, it has, if you've watched the movie with Michael Douglas, it makes seeing Liberace in this situation, because he loves what he's doing. He's a born entertainer. He loves entertaining. He loves people. And his Christmas special is very wonderful, but also has sort of that melancholy undertone to it. But it's very nice. I liked it quite a bit. And then the Johnny Cash one is, it's more the typical variety. I mean, he had a variety show for one season, and it's more, can go hand in hand with the ones that you're talking about.
Yeah. I'll have to check those out. And it's cool that a lot of these are, of course, available like on YouTube or parts of them or whatever. I don't think there's been, legal reasons, I would imagine, just because if you get that many people singing that many licensed songs, it's going to be a problem.
And that's the problem with a lot of what we're going to be talking about tonight, and why some of it's a little bit harder to find, is you have all these different artists that have contributed in some way, and it becomes copyright, licensing, whatever it is.
And legit, they had no clue that was even going to be a problem. They would just do it, perform it, do it, done, move on.
This is the same era where they were taping over Doctor Who stories, because why would we keep those old ones?
Exactly. And it's interesting that I think like the Liberace one in particular, I'm kind of curious about. I'm wondering if it's got that same, sort of appeal that the Kiss Halloween special has been getting over the last couple of years, right? That's got a huge, like, kind of almost a legendary traditional status now. It's like, oh, everybody has to watch that at Halloween now.
I don't think so, because I happened across last year is when I found the Liberace one, and I was just, you go to Amazon, and, out of all the streaming services, Amazon has the widest variety of stuff, because it takes less to get something on there. So you can find these old TV specials to independent films to big Hollywood blockbusters. And so if you go and you type in something like Christmas special, you're going to get so many results with such obscure things and a wide range, like you're saying, anything from old 50s variety shows to modern day specials. And that's what I did, is I put in Christmas specials, and that one was maybe, you know, it was kind of deep in the list, but not too far in. And I thought, you know what? I'm watching a Liberace Christmas special.
Sure, you know. I could definitely see that. The ones that I sort of thought of and had memories of, and I don't, to be honest, some of these a couple. This was the first one, 1977. I don't know if I actually saw it like when it aired, but it's become something that, at least part of it, one thing in particular has become something that I take part in and watch every season now, and that is Bing Crosby's Merry Old Christmas, where Bing Crosby goes to England. This is where the famous Bing Crosby, David Bowie, Little Drummer Boy duet takes place.
Oh, right.
So yeah, that's become very iconic. It was part of Bing Crosby's Christmas special, where Bing and his family travel over to London and have like Christmas adventures or whatever. So that was 1977. Of course, we already mentioned the Star Wars Christmas special in 78. I think that was 78, right? And then 79. This is the one I thought we were gonna like hit together. And maybe you have this on your list somewhere else, but this would be John Denver and the Muppets.
Oh, I've got it, and I watched it today.
I mean, I can't say growing up that I was a big John Denver fan. I've learned to appreciate him over the years, but I can't think of a better pairing, certainly at that time, and even just in general for a Christmas album and a Christmas special, than John Denver and the Muppets. They're just, I mean, John Denver is like a Muppet really in this.
Yeah, that is on my list. I've actually got some notes about it as well. And when it was first released, it got sort of mixed reviews. And so I noticed some of the comments, some of the more, there wasn't anything terribly negative, but one of the themes was, well, by the end of it, John Denver's, he gets a little old. His sweet style runs a little thin.
Right.
But I'm glad you started us where you did with these, because my theory on that is, after decades of the variety shows that you're talking about, this was John Denver's show. The Muppets were in it with him, but it's not like they had other musical guests like all of these other shows had to do these different numbers.
Right.
It was essentially John Denver carrying the show. And I think people weren't used to that in quite that way.
Yeah, this was around the same time as The Muppet Show, right?
Yeah, The Muppet Show had been on at this point, and actually that's something interesting about A Christmas Together, which is the name of the special, is that there are a few moments where it's self-referential to other things, which is very common now, but back then it wasn't done a whole lot. But during the special, they reference John Denver's appearance on The Muppet Show. They reference Miss Piggy's Never Before, Never Again performance from the Muppet movie.
Oh, wow.
So they have essentially acknowledged that this is look, this is too grandiose a term, but you'll get what I'm saying. They've acknowledged a shared universe of
right.
of these
of the
Muppets projects. They're not, back then, very rarely did networks or whoever care that much about tying things together in that way.
Right.
It was just, here's this thing, let's get it out there and sell some cigarettes to people and move on. But Jim Henson, he was still very much over the Muppet empire at that point, the burgeoning Henson empire. And, he thought about these things, and he had control and the ability to make those little differences that made the Muppets a cohesive world unto themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And the album has just become classic. And I think that's helped the special itself. And and yeah, this is something I know I watched at the time, and it made an impression. Certainly, if nothing else, the 12 Days of Christmas is just the most fun you could have singing that song. Almost.
It's the album is one of the first records that was ever considered mine. My mom was a huge John Denver fan, so we had his albums as well. But we had the big giant record cabinet that had my dad's record collection. Well, I guess my mom and dad's record collection in it, and then I had a few of my own that were like at the bottom right corner, separated by a little bookend, that were my records, and I had all the Muppet records, and this was one of them. And so I know, and I think most people probably know this album better than they know the actual special, because when I got, again, I have an import copy because it's never been released in physical media in any way. Although it did replay on the Disney Channel, it's been edited in many different forms. Certain segments have been cut out. There's a segment with John Denver and some toy soldiers that was never aired on the Disney Channel versions. There's a version with Michael Eisner and Kermit the Frog sort of hosting it in interstitials. But it's never seen a home video, Laserdisc, DVD, nothing.
Come on, Disney Plus, get on that.
Right, seriously. Well, it deserves a remaster, because the import DVD that I have, it very obviously was recorded off television, and I'm thrilled to own it, but the quality is not super.
Well, and you can't tell me that this stuff is lost. Like,
no,
Disney,
it's out there.
Yeah, I'm sure this is kept somewhere and can be restored, if not. So,
but again, because of you have the involvement of Andy Williams, John Denver, and the Muppets and Disney. At the time the Muppets, but now Disney. And I don't know what the status is with all of those rights holders. We may have another situation where Andy Williams wrote the songs, John Denver performed the songs,
right?
The Muppets were involved. It may be another mess.
Well, as we get closer and closer to Disney owning everything, then hopefully a lot of this stuff can get cleared up.
It won't matter.
Exactly.
We'll just be able to order it off of Disney's On, and everything will be fine.
Yep, and then get it shipped to our house on Disney Street, in Disneyville. Yeah. So
one note that I wanted to mention about this that I thought was very interesting. Jim Henson did a number of interviews at the time about the special, and since then a lot of things have been said about the making of the special. But one thing that really stood out to me is that 22 new serious Muppets were made for the nativity scene at the end. When John Denver tells the story of Jesus, and then they sing Stille Nacht or Silent Night, whatever. Jim Henson wanted to make sure that scene was very respectful and was he wanted to make sure that nobody felt that they were making light of the nativity. So for the first time ever, they crafted 22 serious Muppets. And if you look at them, they're over the years they have done this style of Muppet before, but they don't have exaggerated features. They have small eyes. They're very sort of standard puppet looking forms, and that's the first time that the Muppets had ever done that.
Wow, that is really cool.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
All right, so then I'm going to move ahead for a couple years, and it's not really a Christmas special in the sense that, look, I've already showed my age by mentioning Big Crosby and Perry Como. So I might as well go all in. But that's when I was this is still when I'm 8, 9, 10 years old, that kind of thing, right? So as we get to the 80s, things change. My life changes. I'm reaching that age where everything is awesome. And MTV comes along, right?
Yeah.
So 1981, MTV has this really weird, kind of holiday special thing that they do. they got Billy Squier to sing "Christmas is the time to say I love you," and it becomes a tradition that I think almost every year after that. I mean, certainly they don't do it now because that would have involved them playing music, and they just don't do that. But Billy Squier was at the top of his game at that time, and it's a dopey song. It's a dopey video. But I got to say, as I get older, watching this video, this was 1981. This is the first year of MTV. You've got the VJs kind of dancing along, and it's got this vibe. And MTV is blowing everybody's minds. It's got so much potential. It's this new thing, and this video kind of captures that time period where MTV was so exciting. And we were, like rock artists, music artists of all kinds were, being presented to us visually. And yeah, because Billy Squier never made a really good video ever. And so this is not like, if you watch it, it's not a great video. And it's really kind of it's a hokey song, really. But there's something about it when I just look at it and I look at all those VJs and everybody, this is just a moment that was captured that I really appreciate. It's like looking through an album and seeing that picture of a vacation or whatever, or like your prom or something like that, where it's like this is something that significantly we all took part in because MTV was a huge deal for a generation or two, right?
Yeah, I would say two probably because I think
I don't know where you were at this time, but
in 1981 I was 5,
so
I was not yet aware of MTV. But I do have this video for the listeners. Most of what we're going to talk about is available in some way or another, and this video is on YouTube, and I've actually got it queued up now. As soon as we're done, I'm going to watch it.
It's just one song because it's like they didn't really do like a whole Christmas special. They would, I think, years after that, they would kind of have someone else come in and sing this song as well. I think, I don't know, the folks at the time like George Thorogood or whatever, came in and did versions of it, but that first one, man. I mean, MTV was the coolest of the cool, and we just really thought that this was like the thing that would change everything. And it is kind of sad to think of what MTV's become, because back then it was a shit. Really, it was the shit. It really was. Well,
and that's when I discovered it probably. I would say 1983 is probably when MTV started to really become a thing in my life. But you're right, it was, for the 80s, MTV was 100% dominant. It was the source of, everything we knew. It was so important, so influential. I mean, very rarely do we have any kind of pop culture retrospective without mentioning MTV in some way.
Right, and unlike today, and I'm not saying better, worse, whatever, that's a different topic we could discuss maybe in 2020 or sometime, but better or worse, whatever, the fact of the matter is that MTV, everybody, if something was on MTV, everybody watched it, everybody knew about it, everybody recognized it. That's where everybody got their entertainment. There were other sources, sure, but MTV was the primary source of pop culture entertainment for my generation at that time, and probably a few years after me, a few generations after. Now, of course, it's various. I mean, everybody's doing their own thing. There's so many different sources. But back then, it really did bring us all together because it was something that we all had in common because we all watched MTV.
We shared a common pop culture language.
Absolutely.
And actually, we did. I think you were on that episode, right? We did an episode about this.
Something like that. I think we did talk about something like that. About I think in reference to like whether or not like people could like celebrities could get as big as then, right? Like,
and this topic absolutely came up as
whether or not there could be something like MTV ever again, right? Like that would change things to that extent.
Could anybody ever be? Because I think where the conversation started was with Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan. Right, exactly.
Right.
But to this point, like, yes. So yeah, I mean, this is just a great reminder of 19 like that time period because it was just magic. So the other two that I have as far as specials, we're going to jump way ahead.
Well, wait, before we jump way ahead.
Okay, gotcha.
Because you brought us into the 80s.
I did.
And we're going to stay here for a minute.
All right. I'm comfortable. I'm wearing my parachute pants.
Well, good. I hope, and I hope this will ring a bell with you. This was the first thing that I sought out. Now, I didn't watch it until after a few other things today because it was on YouTube, and I had to sort of build myself up to watching something where the quality was this lousy. But in 1985, The Escape Clause, which was an episode of The Fall Guy, aired. If you don't know The Fall Guy, it had the greatest theme song in television history.
Sung by one of the greatest action stars at TV history.
Who sang it?
It was Lee Majors.
Lee Majors sang the song? I didn't know that.
I believe so.
That can't be right. That's not right, is it?
I believe so. For The Fall Guy?
Hang on.
Am I challenged?
I've got a Fall Guy. I apologize to the listeners. I understand typing is not entertaining. The Unknown Stuntman by Lee Majors. Oh my gosh. I did not realize that. Oh, that's amazing. So anyway, yes, please, listeners, look up the Fall Guy theme song, The Unknown Stuntman. It's tremendous, and I loved this show when I was a kid. I had the Fall Guy truck. It was a different, because they released one that came with a Colt Seaver action figure, but I didn't have that one. I just had like a die-cast truck. But that truck was, I think the only thing cooler to me than the Fall Guy truck was the General Lee. And the only reason the General Lee was cooler was because Dukes of Hazzard had a larger action figure line that you could put them into the General Lee. That's literally the only reason. But anyway, I love the Fall Guy. It was it's a very 80s show. It has that, it's your typical 80s action show where you get one car chase per episode. You get one slugfest. That it's funny because I imagine people in 1985 watching this show and being like, man, that fight looks really good. Not like that old Batman show that used to be on, when in reality the fight looks exactly the same as the old Batman show.
It really does.
But in this episode, there is a criminal on the run from his criminal buddies, and he happens to run into a mall Santa, and knowing he can't get away, he gives the mall Santa the key to a lockbox that has $20,000 or whatever in bearer bonds in it. But this mall Santa, there's a little more to him than meets the eye. And it's one of my favorite Christmas special tropes.
Really?
Oh, dude. Here's the trope. It's the old, is this guy crazy or is he really Santa? Which was done on Night Court. It's been done on a lot. It was done a lot in the 80s, but it's
the basis for Miracle. It's the basis for Miracle on 34th Street.
Right, exactly. It's classic. I love it. And surprisingly, the Fall Guy, which among its 80s action show contemporaries was relatively more grounded. I don't want to say more serious because they're all just fun, goofy shows, but a little more serious than Knight Rider, while still being fun. But they went with this guy's actually magical. So over the course of the episode, Chris Winter, who is the mall Santa, is trying to say he wants to get this money so he can save an orphanage because, of course, there's an evil criminal guy named Max who's out to get the money, and that darn Santa. And Colt Seaver and his pals have to. They're supposed, because Colt Seaver's a bail bondsman. That's the premise of the show. He's a stuntman, but in the off season he's a bail bondsman. So he takes contracts from the court and goes and tracks down people who haven't shown up for their court cases. It results in all kinds of crazy shenanigans.
Man, you don't. It's like, how could they think of a better badass character than a guy who's like half bionic, right? Part bionic. I know he's part stuntman, part bounty hunter,
right? So they go.
That's awesome.
Oh, it's fantastic. I love this show, and I cannot believe it's not more widely available somewhere, considering everything that's out there. But I feel like it's kind of one of the forgotten. Everybody talks about Knight Rider and A-Team and even Dukes of Hazzard. Nobody ever talks about the Fall Guy, and it's so much fun. And it's Lee Majors, who recently saw his revival thanks to Ash vs. the Evil Dead. But anyway, back to the escape clause. So Colt and his buddies go to bring Chris Winter in, and of course he's at the orphanage playing Santa. Or he's not at the orphanage. He's playing Santa. A bunch of kids are in line, and Colt's like, well, we got to go get him. And his pals are like, no, come on. That's terrible. We can't arrest Santa. And he's like, that's the law. Goes up to Santa, and Santa's like, oh, I told them I'd come back in after Christmas was over. And over the course of the episode, actual, literal, magical things happen. Santa changes traffic lights, makes a car run, makes a dead, like, never going to run again car with the power of his Santa magic, all kinds of stuff. And he wins over Colt and his buddies, and they help him get the bonds so he can save the orphanage. And it's great. It's a fun, heartwarming, action-packed, very, very 80s with stereotypical, like, mafia-type dudes. It's just awesome. And it's on YouTube, but the version you're going to find on YouTube, when it starts, the credits are in French. So it makes me wonder if this is from, like, Montreal or something, because the episode is in English with English language and everything, but the credits are French. So I was like, oh, man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to watch this in French, but then they start talking and it's all English. But it's so much fun. I recommend it for anybody who likes, like, just fun action 80s stuff. It's great.
I'll have to check, because if this is the first season, because it only was 2 seasons.
This is 19...
Oh, no, actually, it went to 3 seasons. 4. Wow, holy crap. How long did this show go? 5? Okay.
This is the 5th season. It's episode 8.
Gotcha. Because I don't think all of the seasons have been released. But if there's one person that we both know that would have it if it was released, and that would be the award-winning writer Bobby Nash.
Yeah, that's absolutely...
He loves this kind of stuff, and so I might pick his brain to see if he's got this one, because I'm curious about it too.
Dude, it's so much fun. I just sat here for I didn't look at my phone once. It's because it's tight, 42 minutes. It's easy enough, and it's a blast.
Well, and just to see, like, Heather Thomas again, and Marky Post. So, man, that brings back memories as well.
Yeah, speaking of Night Court.
Yes, and Night Court has some Christmas specials that Christmas themed ones that they've done as well.
They do, and I didn't have time to go back for any of those. I've got a whole list of stuff that I just didn't make it to before.
Yeah, I mean, there's like if we try to name every single Christmas themed show, that would be crazy.
We've got to save something for next year.
Exactly. And yeah, to the point where, okay, so I was kind of sticking just with the variety specials, but if we're going to bleed into, like, Christmas themed actual shows.
Oh yeah, man. Any Christmas on TV is fair game.
So before we can, so I'm going to have to go back, take a couple steps back, even back before the 70s. Not that I saw it when it aired because I was not alive then, but I'm making a point to say, and this might be, and look, I think we'll probably table all of the regular specials, the one timer, like the Snoopy one, the Peanuts ones and the Rankin Bass ones, because look, everybody talks about those.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't even write any of those down. And if anybody wants to hear about Rankin Bass, I actually have an interview with the official Rankin Bass historian from a couple months ago.
Very good interview. I recommend people check that out because I listened to that, and Rick is a great guy. I wish I got the chance to talk to him at Dragon Con, but I hope he comes back. He seemed to have a good time, so I'm hoping he comes back this year. So I'm going to go back to 1965, Christmas with the Addams Family.
It's on my list.
This is great. Now there are like 3 or 4 shows in the 60s that were in the mid 60s that I just love. They're my favorite, they easily make my top 10, maybe my top 5 TV shows of all time. One is Batman, of course. Batman 66 is known as commonly this time at currently. But they never really did anything Christmassy that I can. I don't think so. So at least not intentionally.
Which seems weird. You'd think a Christmas themed criminal.
Well, I mean, just using Mr. Freeze, right?
Sure.
Sure. But, who wouldn't want to see Christmas with the Joker, right? That would be amazing.
Well, fortunately, we have Batman, the animated series, fulfilled that.
Yes, we do.
And there's also, I didn't get around to revisiting it, so I'll just mention it here. Batman, the Brave and the Bold did an episode, what was it called, Night of a Thousand Santas or something?
Yes, yeah. Batman's got a pretty good, and look, those...
Invasion of the Secret Santas.
That's awesome. I didn't even think about, I didn't even dip my toe into animated stuff as far as Christmas goes because, well, I'll get to those in a bit. But,
sure.
So Batman didn't have a Christmas episode. Star Trek didn't have a Christmas episode. Too sciencey, I guess.
They had a Christmas episode.
Sure. But
Cat's Paw, I think it's called.
That was more of a Halloween one. Was it
Okay, wait, that's not what I'm thinking of then. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. Neither one of us looked at it, so moving along.
Right. So, and the one of the other series that I love from that time period is the Addams Family. Now, the second season, they decided to acknowledge holidays, so they came out with a Halloween episode, which seems like every episode for them. And they had a Christmas episode, Christmas with the Addams Family, and this one is really fun. It's got all of your typical Addams Family stuff that they have to get in, but also just I think Morticia in particular is like a standout in this. I think she actually even sings. But because of the kids, actually also, this is interesting too. There seems to be, because this dawned on me too, even though Addams is spooky and is obviously connected to Halloween, it's amazing to me that there's also been this connection with the Addams Family and Christmas. The original cartoons have some of the most famous ones of those are Christmas themed.
I saw one today of Morticia and Gomez. They're looking out the window, and she's saying something along the lines of, I don't know what it is, but I can't help but feeling cheerful, or something like that.
Right. But I mean, it's just such a contrast. I think that's what makes it so beautiful. Like the really famous one, and they actually do this in one of the movies, where the carolers are down there singing, and the Addams Family is on the roof with a big pot of boiling oil.
Yes.
About to turn on them. So there's that image, which is just amazing. That was done in one of the movies. And a lot of people don't know that actually they tried to integrate a lot of the cartoons in the show. And the Christmas one actually has, I think, I want to say 2 or 3. There's one where Pugsley and Wensley start a fire in the fireplace, and they're watching it because they want to see Santa burn. I mean, it's not said outright, but it's kind of like if you know the joke, it's really funny. I think there's another one where Gomez and Morticia are literally like trimming the tree, so there's no like foliage or like decorations on it at all. They're stripping it bare or whatever. And so there's a lot of jokes like that. But then of course, like, you know, it's a 60s sitcom, so it's got to have its heartwarming moments, and the fact that I think almost all the family members, I know Gomez and Uncle Fester, try to bring Santa to the kids, so they both dress up as Santa. I think even Lurch does too, to try to bring Santa like Christmas magic to the kids, and it's cute, it's adorable, but it's the Addams Family at Christmas, and there's something really cool about that contrast.
And again, all of the Addams Family is available on Amazon Prime.
Yes, I have them all on DVD, but yes, I think they are available as well. So yes, check those out. I think, is that the earliest thing I have? That might be the earliest special I have. By the way, the other 60s series that I love as well is Get Smart, and they did do a couple of Christmassy type things, but to be honest, they don't hold as much memories for me, I guess. And
sure.
I'm thinking about making it a point, because I own that series as well, to dig those out in particular, to watch those this season to see if they hold up. You know.
Well, that's part of what I did today, because not everything is available on streaming services, and I had to dig into my DVD collection for some of my selections, which I did go into animation a good bit, because some of my favorite, you and I both grew up with Christmas specials, Christmas episodes being a thing, being a part of the holiday season. And for me, we've talked about cartoons and animation over and over and over again on this show, and those special Christmas episodes of the classic 80s cartoons were such a big deal to me, because I loved G.I. Joe, Real Ghostbusters, like all of those shows. I loved them so much, but then when they did a Christmas episode, that felt like something extra special, because they're putting two things that I really love together. And I'm going to throw a few things out there, and I want to know if you remember, or if you're like, oh, yeah, I remember that being a thing. So one of the ones I watched today was an episode of G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, called Cobra Claws Are Coming to Town. Now, if you know, Cobra Claws are the hang gliders that the Cobras used in the cartoon. They used them a lot because it was one of the cheaper toys. So it was a good motivation, like, as a kid watching the cartoon, you're like, oh my gosh, Cobra's got like 100 of those hang glider things. I got to get some of those. But anyway, Cobra Claws Are Coming to Town, and basically the premise is the Joes are going and picking up toy donations, and it's basically Toys for Tots. They don't call it that, but that's what it is, to bring them back to Joe headquarters, and then they'll send them all out the next day. Well, Cobra, being Cobra, has snuck some miniaturized evil toys into the toy donations in order to sneak themselves into G.I. Joe headquarters. Now, the end of the plan is not they're going to regrow themselves and go out and just murder all the Joes, because that's not how Cobra works.
Right.
Cobra's plan, once they're in G.I. Joe headquarters, they are going to grow themselves back up again, unshrink themselves, take command of all of the G.I. Joe vehicles, and attack a nearby town in order to destabilize G.I. Joe's position as the defenders of American freedom.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
So, it is a very Christmassy episode. There are Christmas trees all over the place. There is a Christmas dinner in the G.I. Joe headquarters with the Joes that did not get to go on leave and had to remain behind. Roadblock makes a big-ass turkey. And of course, in the end, G.I. Joe wins and Christmas is happy and everything is wonderful. But it's great. It's wonderful. You cannot go wrong with the Christmas episode of literally any 80s cartoon.
Yeah, I would think so. I guess I'm not as familiar with those because I don't think I was watching a lot of
award-winning Bobby Nash would be on board with me on this
one. So really, I think we're just, you really should have had the award-winning Bobby Nash on this episode. So
I'll remember that next year.
I think that's pretty clear.
A couple more animated, just real quick, that I wanted to bring up. Real Ghostbusters did a Christmas episode called Xmas Marks the Spot. If you know the Real Ghostbusters cartoon, you know that J. Michael Straczynski wrote a lot of episodes of Real Ghostbusters. And the DVDs that were released that collect the Real Ghostbusters have interviews with Straczynski and the other writers and creators and character designers. And sometimes they actually will do introductions for specific episodes. It's a really good collection to have. Like, it's worth having for the special features. And in Straczynski's introduction for Xmas Marks the Spot, and now I'm realizing there are two instances where it's okay to say Xmas. This is one of them because they're using it as a play on X Marks the Spot. But Straczynski says that he's a huge fan of Charles Dickens, and that what he did with this episode, which is one of his favorites that he wrote, is he put himself in the place of Peter Venkman to sort of ask a lot of the questions that he had about Christmas. And over the course of the episode, the Ghostbusters travel back in time, because that's a thing that they do in their cartoon, and they accidentally capture the three spirits that were supposed to visit Ebenezer Scrooge. Then they get back to the present day. They discover that Scrooge has all but eliminated Christmas from the world.
Wow.
Because he was not visited by those three spirits.
Yes. Well, I think, the ghosts of Christmas and Ghostbusters, that's
perfect. It's great. It's a really fun episode, and Peter Venkman starts off the episode as I don't care about Christmas, it's just another day, and over the course of the episode, he discovers the magic of the season, but there's a really cool segment where Egon has to put on a special suit so that he can go into the ghost containment unit to get the spirits of Christmas back out so that they can go back in time and give Ebenezer Scrooge his horrible night that changed his whole entire life and restore Christmas to the world. And you get to see all of the ghosts, or a lot of the ghosts, that have actually been on the series up to that point, including Sam Hain from a couple of the Halloween episodes. So that was really neat to go into the containment unit and see all of these spirits that they've been collecting over the course of the series.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah, it's a very, very good episode. And like I said, it's J. Michael Straczynski. He's a very good writer. It's so funny how many good writers came out of these 80s cartoon shows. And then before we move on, the last one I have to mention, and it sort of defies description, so I'm just going to say if you can track down the Tick animated series.
Oh, that's what I was going to mention. 1995.
It's on your list? Okay, we'll leave it for later then.
Well, we can talk about it now. The Tick Loves Santa.
The Tick Loves Santa.
This is, Tick is one of my favorite cartoons ever.
You and I both have that Dark Knight Returns Tick shirt.
Yes, we do. Yes. And oh man, meeting Townsend Coleman was the fact that Townsend Coleman and Kevin Conroy were at the same event in Atlanta this past summer just blows my mind. Yeah. I can't think of two voices that impacted me on animated shows ever.
If Frank Welker had been there as well, my head would have just exploded.
Tick Loves Santa. The plot is typically silly Tick stuff, but It's basically Tick and Arthur doing their rounds. They run across Santa stealing something.
An evil criminal who has stolen a Santa suit from a Salvation Army Santa has made electric clones of himself.
No, well, absolutely. Well, that's the thing. He doesn't so the police are chasing Santa, and the Tick follows along because he's trying to save him. Like, why are they,
Right.
Like, why are they going after Santa? Because he's that simple-minded fool we all love. And in the chase sequence, Santa falls into a neon sign and is fried. Now, Tick believes he killed Santa.
Yes.
But instead of killing him, of course, it's a cartoon. It's the Tick. So instead of killing him, all of a sudden, multiple Santas begin electric clones of Santa, of this crook Santa, begin to just come out of this, and they go on a crime spree, and they start attacking the city.
One of the best lines of the show is when Tick goes back to his apartment where they're having the Christmas party, which is another neat thing about this episode, is you see all of the supporting cast.
Yep.
In the episode, you get to see American Maid and Deflator Mouse and Sewer Urchin. He goes back to the apartment, and they're trying to explain, and we don't, within this fictional world, obviously, there is no Santa Claus, these characters think, because it's a cartoon and it's ridiculousness, and they're telling the Tick that there's no Santa Claus, and he goes, I know, because I fried him.
Exactly. And then, I love the fact that the heroes, they go to try to stop the Santas, but they get their ass handed to them because the Tick won't fight, because he's like, I can't hit Santa. And so they get their butt kicked. One of my favorite lines is from Deflator Mouse, who's like, so, Tick, that was an interesting strategy. The one where you just stood there in the middle of the fight and did absolutely nothing while the rest of us got creamed. And then the real Santa, we see the real Santa with all his
elf secret service,
right? Which is just brilliant. Says, convinces Tick that he's got to stop them. He still doesn't know what to do, but fortunately, they can be destroyed by static electricity. So that's these clone Santa's weakness, and so they just rub them together. They poof disappear, and Christmas is saved. It's brilliant. It's so much fun. It is. It's a season 2 episode, and I don't know if there's a bad episode of the Tick, in my opinion, but this is one of the best. This is a absolute 5-star. Every part of this is just a riot. It's really fun. If nobody has ever seen an episode of the Tick, this is not a bad one to start with.
I agree. Well, and that's the other cool thing about Christmas episodes, is they do tend to be a good point, because if you're a fan of Christmas, you already have a touchstone for watching and enjoying the episode, so it's a good way to introduce you to the world and the characters that the Christmas is happening in. I think in general, Christmas episodes are probably a decent starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. Although sometimes, it's a hit or miss. I mean, sometimes I think, a lot of times the series will use Christmas as I don't want to say a crutch, but it just becomes lazy. And so they're not as good, or it's difficult to
it depends on the show.
that sort of Christmas content into a normal episode of something, So you do see a lot of shows use traditional Christmas stories to tell a version of it. We get, like you mentioned, Christmas Carol with Ghostbusters. We see various versions of Christmas Carol. We see various versions over the years of Gift of the Magi. We see various versions of It's a Wonderful Life. I think one of the most famous ones of those is It's a Bundiful Life, Married with Children. I know that's the one that Bobby Nash loves, since we're putting his stuff over too tonight. So you see a lot of shows will do spin-offs on that in order to sort of make it a little bit easier or palatable to do a show on Christmas.
it was a great animated series. The Tick was, and it made good use of its Christmas episode. It wasn't lazy. And you're right, it's a Wonderful Life. Like, I feel like if it's overall a good show, then its Christmas episode is a good starting point. But if it's something that maybe had ups and downs or was mediocre at times, then you're right. Then the Christmas episode, it could have been a crutch.
Yeah, sometimes it was. That's why when granted, my memory's getting worse every minute. But when I look back, even though there was some great, I was a TV baby. I grew up watching all sorts of television, and I'm sure that a lot of them did, Christmas-themed episodes. I mean, I can't believe over the decade that I watched Happy Days that they didn't do like a bazillion Christmas episodes. But to be honest, I can't remember any of them being of any significance, right?
Mike Gordon, my friend, let me just tell you.
Do you have a Happy Days one on there?
Earlier, just a few hours ago. Okay, so for you and for the listeners, if you go onto YouTube and put in, I put in 80s Christmas specials, and I found several different playlists that were just compilations of Christmas episodes of television shows.
Okay.
And I found one that had Happy Days, Ozzie and Harriet, Car 54, Where Are You?, Beverly Hillbillies. There were 74 different episodes in this playlist.
I was going to say, I would imagine everybody did. Like Gilligan's Island probably did one.
Right. But I watched, it wasn't Happy Days, it was Happy Days Again, which I'm not... It seemed like it was just an episode of Happy Days.
Happy Days Again was,
What was it? I don't know.
I think it was I'd have to look it up, but I think it was the later seasons of Happy Days, which really didn't have, I think it had the Fonz and like appearances by Mr. and Mrs. Cunningham, but maybe that was about it or something.
Everybody was in this episode. It had Richie and Joni and what's his name? Ralph the Mouth, and like everybody that I remembered from Happy Days was in this. Al shows up, but it's they're having Christmas and Mr. Cunningham brings home this new thing from the hardware store. It's an aluminum tree imported from Taiwan or something. And they all hate the aluminum tree. And over the course of the episode, everybody that comes over knows that like Joni hates the aluminum tree, so they're all bringing her trees. So by the end of the episode, they have like 10 Christmas trees in the Cunningham living room. But the big focal point of the episode is Fonzie gets a gift from his dad, who he hasn't seen since he's 3 years old, and who he has hard feelings towards because he hasn't seen him, and he thinks he's to blame. Like I don't remember the Fonz ever really having big emotional episodes, but this one, like, it really deals with his feelings and his emotions. It was a good episode. I enjoyed watching it, and I'm not like. When I was a kid, I really liked Happy Days, but since then, it's not anything that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a big Happy Days fan. Put me on that Dragon Con Happy Days panel.
I have to say that I guess I was because I watched it, almost without fail every Tuesday. You know, it was like Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Three's Company. Sometimes I dip my toe in a taxi, but usually I went to bed. But that was like it for. I mean, it was just a standard thing that you watched. I don't think we had it like we never really thought about. Do you like it or not? This is just what you watched, right? Yeah. By the way, because it was bugging me, not to be that guy, but I had to look it up because I was just curious. And I should have remembered this, is that when reruns for Happy Days first went into syndication, while the series was still producing new ones, the reruns were retitled Happy Days Again, so they wouldn't be confused with the new ones.
That's what it felt like to me. It felt like just a regular Happy Days episode, so I didn't understand the again on there.
Yeah, because they repackaged them just to put them in syndication.
Okay.
And like I said, so you didn't have like two channels that were showing Happy Days. One was showing Happy Days, which was the new episodes, and one was showing Happy Days again. Because back then you didn't want to make sure that your DVR was getting confused, right? So.
Well, this was this was on YouTube, like I said, and what I really liked about this is it was very clearly recorded off the television, but all the commercials were left in.
Right, so it must have been somebody recorded off of a rerun,
off of a Chicago station.
Yeah,
yeah. So it was a fun watch. I enjoyed it. Ron Howard is like way more charming than I really remembered him being, and Mrs. Cunningham's kind of hot.
Yeah, that's okay. I you know what? Probably as I get older, it's probably like, oh yeah, I can see that.
Yes, right, exactly, and that's what it is. But yeah, that was a fun one. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Speaking of which, I want to dial back just a bit because when you were talking about the Fall Guy, I was looking something up and about
How dare you?
I know. I have to go back and we're talking about reruns, right? So Fall Guy again, right? So but you had mentioned that the John Denver Muppet special got into some, legal stuff because of Paul Williams, right? Because he did a lot of stuff with that.
I said Andy Williams like 50 times, and I meant Paul Williams.
That's all right. Christmas specials. Andy Williams did a ton of those. It's easy to understand why you got confused. But anyway, here's the thing that according to the internet, which is never wrong, it says here when the first season of Fall Guy was released on DVD, it contained music substitutions, of course, due to copyright reasons.
Sure.
And then it said, as well as completely editing out the sequences with actor-singer Paul Williams in the pilot. And I'm like, what is up with Paul Williams that he's such a dick about about having copyright stuff go out without making it difficult for things?
Wow. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
So apparently,
he'll show up anywhere, but he won't let you use it.
No, you got to pay him if you want to use it.
That's right.
That's how Paul gets his money.
One more that I wanted to bring up, and this is not part of a regular series. This is an actual special, and one that certainly when I was a kid, I thought that it would end up being up there with the Rankin Bass specials, with the with the Charlie Brown Christmas and all that sort of stuff. And it's because, to me, Bloom County was the greatest. That comic strip meant so much to me when I was young. I read it every single Sunday. When they stopped carrying Outland in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, my grandmother would actually cut them out of their paper and mail them to me. I love Burke Breathed. I love Bloom County. I love Opus. So when A Wish for Wings That Work, which was Berkeley Breathed's very first illustrated children's book, was adapted into an animated special, at the time, I was excited as I've ever been in my life. This was 1991. I would have been 15. I would have been 15 years old. So at that point, I'd been reading Bloom County for 5-6 years, probably right around there. I started reading those strips and collecting those books before I really understood most of the humor. But it was a literal dream come true that finally Bloom County, the sort of bastard child of comic strips, was getting animated. Because back then, Peanuts got animated. Like everything, all of the comic strips got movies and cartoons and series. Garfield, Heathcliff had a show, for goodness sake. Because I'm trying to keep it clean for our Christmas episode. So,
well, you mentioned Heathcliff, so
for years it had been outrageous to me that Bloom County had never seen animation. In 1991, this special was released, and I didn't love it, but I loved Bloom County so much that I made myself love it, if that makes sense. Now I'm guessing you've seen. Well, I don't know if you're a fan of Bloom County, right?
I am. I
Okay.
can remember when it first, started appearing in papers, and it couldn't, like in our area, it didn't get a release in a daily paper because Berkeley couldn't break that wall.
Right.
So it was in one of the free papers that came out weekly, and what they did was the whole back page was all of them for the week. So I ate that stuff up. I thought it was Doonesbury, but it spoke to me. Like it was like it was like a Doonesbury Jr., if you will, but it wasn't like, dumbed down. It was, but it referenced like Star Wars, and it referenced like it was, Berkeley was it was talking to me. It was all about the stuff that I dug.
He was on our pop culture wavelength.
Yeah, yeah. And it wasn't, even though it was political, it wasn't as like steeply adult political like Doonesbury was.
It was more general. It wasn't necessarily, I mean, it would reference current events, but
Right.
it would put them in the context of that world.
And it was much sillier. Like,
Yes.
Doonesbury was much more, but I thought that the cartooning style was similar, at least to start with.
So, the animated special airs on CBS. It is called Opus and Bill, A Wish for Wings That Work, because Opus and Bill the Cat were, at that point, fairly marketable. I mean, there were plush toys and T-shirts. They had a presence in the pop culture lexicon, so they threw that on there. And I hated Opus's voice in that, and with apologies to oh gosh, where did he go? I had it written down here, and I don't know where it went. But Opus's voice was not at all what I pictured or what I'd thought of as Opus's voice.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like some of it was a little more crass than it needed to be, and it didn't. I was happy to see it, but I wasn't happy with it.
Right, I know what you mean.
And I'm not the only one. I only recently discovered this in doing my research for this episode. Berkeley Breathed hates it. And I have here some quotes that he has about this. And if you're familiar with him, he's pretty straightforward. He doesn't pull punches, especially about his own work. And here we go. Asked in a 2003 Washington Post interview where a copy of the special could be found on VHS or DVD, Breathed replied, "Hopefully in the rubbish pail. We can do better than that, and we will with an eventual Opus film. But I'm glad you enjoyed it. I presume your family was on speed when they watched it. I imagine that would help."
That sounds like Berkeley and George have something in common.
So the director, Skip Jones, apparently took a lot of liberties in creating the special, deviated a lot from not just the book itself, but from the tone of Berkeley's work in general. And here's another quote about that. The director, who was fired, managed to sprinkle a profane cornucopia of inappropriate flotsam around in the show. Find a moldy DVD and check out the opening credit sequence. Watch the snowy hills during the pan. Some of them aren't hills, and that train track isn't really going into a train tunnel, unless it's Sigmund Freud's. It's pretty funny now, I guess. Imagine how funny it was when we initially spotted it during final mixing 6 days before network broadcast. Keep in mind, this was a Steven Spielberg production of a family Christmas show. I tried but failed to imagine Steven believing me when I tried to disclaim authorship of a woman's snow anus in the countryside, or the sign in the window of the store that said, "For sale cheap, Santa's balls." Too late to change. This was the pre-digital age. We courageously let it go without telling anyone. I'm glad I'm telling this in a trade magazine, and I can feel safe that it won't be going out on the internet thing.
Too late.
So it's actually reassuring to know that it's not like Breathed, who I grew up. He was one of the creators that I knew before I really was taking note of creators, because, you know, if you're a fan of comic strips, the name was always there. Like, you knew who did those comic strips. And I'm glad to know that this wasn't his vision, and that the things that I don't like about this, he also does not like about them. One of the big things was that he wanted Sterling Holloway to voice Opus. And if you know Sterling Holloway, he worked for Disney for decades. He was the original voice of Winnie the Pooh. And I can imagine, yes, that would have been great. That makes sense to me. So I went back and revisited this. It's available on YouTube. I used to have it, and I don't know what happened to it. It's one of those things that in one of my many moves it disappeared. But, you know, I can enjoy it now because it is stylistically, like visually, it is very true to Berkeley Breathed style. The characters look right. There are some good jokes. It is fun. And now I have some distance where it's not as crucial to me as it once was. Because I'll tell you, watching this, I thought, great. Now that this has happened, any day now we're going to get that Bloom County animated series that I've been waiting for so long. Like, that was a lock to me.
Right. Oops.
Yeah. So I mean, it's out there, and I've watched it, and I just feel bad for Berkeley
Everyone.
because this didn't go right. Mars Needs Moms didn't go right. He has not had a lot of success with people adapting his work, and I think it's a damn shame because it's, for me, it's at the very top of my selection of pop culture fondness.
You know, I don't think he has mentioned it specifically, but it's things like that where I don't blame guys like Bill Watterson for not doing any, like, not wanting any part of stuff like that.
Right.
Like, you know, Bill's like, nope, no merchandise, no, like, it's just a comic strip. Calvin and Hobbes will always just be a comic strip. It existed. That's it. Like, don't do anything else with it. And you want to keep it pure.
Yeah, and that's, you're 100% right. For anybody that doesn't understand why you can't buy Calvin and Hobbes action figures, watch A Wish for Wings That Work. Watch Mars Needs Moms, and understand why creators may not want other people meddling with their work.
Yeah, when Christmas specials go bad.
Yeah. And it's, look, I can't call it bad, but it's disappointing if you're a fan of Bloom County.
Gotcha. Well, it's one that I, believe it or not, I have not seen, but it's not one that I probably will see at all. I don't know. I think I must have gotten wind that it was not good, so I just decided to avoid that because I loved Bloom County so much. I know it sounds weird, but and I think when did it air?
91.
Yeah, I mean that's when I was college, trying to make my. I just graduated from college, trying to make my way. Yeah, that's at a time period where I probably didn't even know it was out until
right.
Yeah, it's for a while, and by then it was like can't find it because Berkeley is out there destroying all the copies of it.
Yeah.
So, but I will say, if we are allowed to move on, and I think that might be my last one, but because I was trying to think of something more recent, right? Like, okay, so there must be some recent Christmas special that I've seen, or some Christmas story in a show I've seen that's like I really like a lot. And it's it's one of those things where I'm like, really, the most recent thing I can think of was something that aired 20 years ago,
right?
But this would be Futurama. Xmas Story. This is another X, but Xmas Story, which turns out to be like, I think it's actually a trilogy at this point of robot Santa stories. And the idea of robot Santa, for those people who don't know, in the future, like the 28th century or something like that, the Friendly Robot Company develops a version of Santa, St. Nicholas, right, to determine like who's been naughty night. They're going to automate the process, and they're going to bring kids like real Santa. So their intentions are good, but due to programming error, the robot Santa turns into a mad murderer because his standards for what is a good person or a good kid is too high. So, I mean, he doesn't give out coal. He slaughters anybody who's been naughty. So in the future, every Christmas Eve, when Fry kind of gets thrown there, because Fry is, from our time, he gets thrown to the future. So he's all like, oh, this is right from the first season. As a matter of fact, I understand this is the second story that, what's his name? The guy who did, Matt Groening, right?
Oh, okay.
And David Cohen, who did Futurama. This is the first, like, one of the second stories they pitched to Fox, like, to sell this show. So this is very early on, but so Fry is catapulted to the future. He's like, Christmas is coming, and he's really excited, and everybody else is like, you're crazy. Like, Christmas is like the worst, like, it's the worst thing ever. It's just a terrifying time for people because this robotic Santa goes on this spree, and you cannot be seen out and about because he will come and he will hunt you down and kill you. And it's a hilarious take on the whole St. Nicholas thing, and done in, typical Futurama style. And there's even a Gift of the Magi kind of storyline between, I think, the gift exchange between Zoidberg and Xavier, I think, right? Xavier, right? Is that his name? But it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. And like I said, there leads to some others. Some other Tale of Two Santas, I think, is the next one in the series, and I think there's 3 total. But they're really fun.
Yeah, I've got the Christmas song from that is in my playlist.
Santa Claus is gunning you down.
Yeah. It is. It's a fun episode. It's a great episode of the show. I like Futurama. I don't love Futurama, but like, it's eminently watchable. If it just came on, I would sit and watch it.
There's times where it's something that it's weird. It's something that I love, or I feel like I should love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I watch it and I'm like, I love this. But then if I'm not watching it, I don't remember to watch it. I don't it's just one of those things that's just really strange. Just like whenever we intersect, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's Futurama. That's awesome. But I don't record it. I haven't watched every single episode. I mean, they're available. They're streaming. They're probably going to be on Disney Plus at some point, or maybe Hulu. I don't know which ones they're going to be on. But in any case, it's a great series. I have a blast every time I watch it. There are very few that I've seen that I'm like, ew. Most of them are just brilliant, and yet for some reason it's not an appointment TV for me.
I'm pretty much in that same boat. It's weird. I don't know why I don't have more attachment to it, but
it's one of those things that, like, it's like one of those things where, like, someone that goes, oh, you're going to love this, right? Because they know you, and yes, there's something that they found that checks all the boxes. But for some reason, when you hear it, listen to it, watch it, what have you, you're just like, there's something missing. And, sometimes you can put your finger on it, sometimes you can't. I haven't really put my finger on exactly why, Futurama and I don't, like, get along in the same space, but or share the same space very often. But maybe at some point I will. I don't know. It's glad to know that it's always there.
I think it's great, but I don't seek it out.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
Yeah, I guess I think sometimes our cup is just runneth over, right?
Yeah,
and and if something is checking all the boxes, that's fine. But when you've got other things that are already checking those boxes that you love and you don't want to give up, then no matter how good, how no matter how good that cheesecake is, you're just like, no, I'm full with everything else I ate, right?
Well,
like I just can't fit anything else into me.
And I think another part of it is that while I like all of the characters, I'm not attached to any of them. There's not any single character that I'm like, I cannot wait to see what so-and-so is up to. They're all solid, good, funny voices, but there's not one that speaks to me.
I can see that.
Well, Mike, I appreciate your attempt to bring us up to date, despite the fact that it fell 20 years short.
I can't think of anything even more remotely more recent.
I'm going to throw one out there from this year.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's a pretty good one to close on. I think you watched this show, but I'm not positive. But earlier this year, this aired as the season finale of the second season of Glow.
Yes, I do watch Glow.
A very Glow Christmas.
Yes, thank you for that. That's awesome. Thank you. Yes.
And man, I adore this show. I picked it as my favorite television show the year it debuted. I'm so engaged with it. I love everybody on it. I love the stories. I love the balance of drama and comedy. I'm so invested in it. And this show, this finale, this episode, managed to be a 100% perfect Christmas episode while also being a perfect season / at the time, potential series finale. Now, they are getting a third and final season. But at the time, we didn't know that. And this episode, once again, we have a telling of A Christmas Carol via professional wrestling in Las Vegas.
But what I liked about this, just hold on that for a second, because what I really loved about that is because the third season, we didn't really get a lot of in-ring stuff. And I really loved the in-ring stuff from the other two seasons. And
this is season 3. You're right. I was thinking this was season 2. So we're getting a fourth and final season.
Right. When we do get the in-ring stuff in the third season, it's really special, and this is probably the most special.
Yes. As their big final show of the year, they decide to tell the story of A Christmas Carol through a professional wrestling show, and it's absolutely perfect. But outside of that, all of the characters get these huge emotional moments of resolution for these storylines that have been going on for 3 seasons.
Yep.
And it's now this is not one I would probably recommend is, hey, check this out if you want to check this show out, because it essentially is the culmination of 3 seasons of storytelling.
It really is.
But it's so well done. I cried at least twice during this episode just because it gives you everything that you want for these characters if you've become invested in them. I just loved it, man. I loved it.
No, absolutely. It is really, it's Glow. It's the series at its best, and I don't think it ever really dips to a bad point.
No.
Like a low point, but this is definitely, it ends. If this was the last episode, I don't know if they knew for sure they were coming back when they filmed this.
I don't think that they did, because if I remember correctly, Marin, he had an interview with one of the writers after this episode, and then later on his podcast announced that they found out that they were getting a 4th final season.
Gotcha. So, and I remember when we reviewed it, the season for the Air Station 1 podcast, and I know that some of the people that were on it were talking about how that they thought, if it didn't come back, they would be satisfied as a finale. I wouldn't, as much as I like the episode a lot, maybe I just don't want to let go of the show because it's like, to me, it's not satisfying.
I think it's
like I would want it to return because I was like, no, there's still a lot of questions here.
I'm not going to go so far as to say it's not the series finale I would dream of, but if that had been the end, I would have been like, you know what? Okay, they wrapped enough up that it's not going to leave me hanging like the last episode of Human Target.
Right, and I do fear that in the look, the show's smart enough that I don't think this is going to be an issue, but with the actual Glow show being like a, whether it's on a cable TV or whether it's a Vegas show, completely ending, I do wonder, like, it seems like for the fourth season they're going to have to like be really like creative in terms of bringing it back, and maybe that's not a good thing, maybe it is, I don't know. Like I said, I trust these people, so
and that's the thing, is I trust them. I think if they didn't have an idea when Netflix came to them, they would have said, we don't have anything.
Right.
And they would have said, we don't have anything else for Glow, but we've got this other idea. Like, sure. I think that would have been the conversation. And look, Netflix doesn't just go throwing fourth seasons around either.
Right. But I really, as far as where a lot of the characters are, it does it doesn't put a final period on them, but it does put them in places where that they've been leading up to for the entire, and especially Ruth. Like, yes. Ruth's arc from the first episode to this one is really amazing, watching that develop. And unlike a lot of, like you said, unlike a lot of the other times where Christmas or holidays in general are used to kind of get more eyes on a show, I would not say, oh, you like Christmas? Watch The Very Glow Christmas because you'll love it. Because as much as I would recommend watching them do the Christmas Carol part, if you could just edit that part out, like just take the Christmas Carol and the ring stuff and make a, video of that, then I would, I'd love to.
That'd be a lot of fun. And it wouldn't surprise me if that's out there somewhere.
Yeah, the Christmas Carol edit.
Oh my gosh, I would love to see. Well, that one wasn't televised though; it was just a live show. I was going to say I would love to see like a televised special version of that, like complete with artificial, 80s looking production on the screen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Anytime something references Christmas Carol, I'm in, because it's one of my favorite, not just one of my favorite Christmas stories, but it's one of my favorite stories, period. Definitely within my top 5 of books, stories, whatever you have like that I've read and seen every year. I mean, in addition to watching all these specials, every year I watch some sort of different, because there's thousands of them out there, different versions of Christmas Carol. So I can't say I've seen near all of them because there's just so many, but anytime I see a reference, you've got me, because I'm like, okay, I love this.
Well, Mike, we have talked about a ton of Christmas television, but we have barely scratched the surface of what is out there. I encourage everyone listening to check out the stuff that we talked about, except maybe A Wish for Wings That Work. But go check this stuff out.
And the Star Wars Christmas special.
And the Star Wars holiday special. Let's stay away from that, too.
Yeah, those two. Yeah, there's a lot of better stuff out there.
Yes. But, it's all available in some shape or form, streaming, or, a lot of it you can get cheap on DVD from Amazon, whatever the case may be. Go check this stuff out. Please join the Needless Things Podcast Facebook group, although I will note, if it becomes apparent to me that you are a troll, I will block you and throw you out. But please join us over there. Get in on the conversation. Let us know what your favorite Christmas TV episodes are. We would love to hear from you and check those out. I can always add more stuff to my TV playlist. Mike, before we go, where are you online? What are you up to? What's happening with you, man?
Well, of course, you can find me at newlegendmike.com, tikizombie.net, I think, net.net. Yeah, I didn't get .com for that one. Bummer. But and see all the things that I'm doing books-wise, which I think 2020 is going to be a really, we'll say, big and interesting. It may be a big year, but it's going to be an interesting year. I'm really got some ambitious plans for 2020. Production-wise, a lot of things that have not happened in the last year or two are like the corner has been turned, so they're going to see some stuff come out in 2020. And of course, you can find me on the Earth Station 1 podcast every week.
Very cool. We'll be following along to see what happens for you next year. In the meantime, Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy holidays. And just have some fun. Enjoy yourself. Find some fun stuff to do. And if it's on TV, then we will approve. Mike, thanks for coming on and talking about Christmas on TV.
As always, it's my pleasure. Thank you, sir. And Merry Christmas to you and the family.
Man, this only having sound in the right ear thing is really, really annoying. And I was starting to think, gosh, I don't know if I can wait for Christmas. And look, I'm not expecting, I'm pretty sure my family already has all their shopping done. So I was kind of kidding about the whole Christmas thing. But I don't think I could wait for Christmas anyway, is what I was thinking, because this is annoying. But I realize next week we're recording the Needless Commentary. The week after that, I expect to also be a live recording, or an in-person recording, I'll say. So I may not need, but see, I have to use them for editing. So I think I'm going to have to go out tomorrow, run over to Fry's, which is where I got these so many years ago, and where I got my recorder that I use to record things live. Might have to run over there after work tomorrow, or today in your guys' time, and go ahead and just grab a new headset. But I love this one. I love it so much. But I guess if it's lasted 7 years, that's great. And it's time to go ahead and just say, well, I guess I need to get a new one. And you know what? This could be a tax write-off. And I just am... I'm so afraid of even attempting that kind of thing that I've never done anything tax write-off related. I've twice had everything in front of me, and I'm just like, nope, I don't feel like the government would consider this a business, because it certainly isn't making me any money. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode regardless. Please go check out needlessthingspodcast.com. Join the Needless Things Podcast Facebook group. Follow Needless Things Podcast on Instagram. And spread the word. If you enjoyed this, spread it around like holiday cheer. I love you guys.
Thank you for listening to the Needless Things Podcast. You're the best. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Downcast, or in the ears of a Trader Vic's employee. Love you. Mean it. Uh-huh.